Hello everyone, I'm Alex Dykes, and today we're taking a look at the 2014 Cadillac CTS V-Sport. This is Cadillac's answer to the twin-turbo V8 German competition. Now, while it may sound silly to bring a V6 to a twin-turbo V8 fight, this is no normal V6. This is a brand new 3.6-liter twin-turbo V6 that Cadillac is shoving under the hood of their existing and very well-received Cadillac CTS. Cadillac has been doing rear-wheel drive luxury sedans for some time, ever since they launched their original CTS in the United States. However, this is an entirely different beast. The old Cadillac CTS was trying to deliver almost 5 Series sized vehicles with a 3 Series price tag, and that's not happening with the CTS anymore. The CTS is a solid mainstream BMW 5 Series, Mercedes-Benz E-Class, Audi A6, and Jaguar XF competitor with very competitive pricing. Cadillac is able to do that because they now have the ATS. It's smaller than the CTS, and it's a solid BMW 3 Series, Mercedes-Benz C-Class competitor. Before we dive right into the car, let's cover a few things up front. This is a clean sheet redesign for the Cadillac CTS, and there's some real advantages to that. The first one is weight. This Cadillac CTS weighs more than 400 pounds less than a BMW 5 Series or a Mercedes-Benz E-Class, making this incredibly light for this category. In fact, depending on how you configure your ATS, you can get one that weighs slightly less than 4,000 pounds. That's a big difference when it comes to driving dynamics out on the road. That weight loss routine also explains how Cadillac can get away with bringing a V6 to a V8 fight. Styling is very subjective, but I've always been very partial to Cadillac's angular art and science design theme, and I think that's why I also find the 2014 Mercedes-Benz E-Class so attractive, because the front end of the Mercedes-Benz and the Cadillac remind me an awful lot of each other. Important to note that Cadillac was doing this before Mercedes-Benz, so in some ways some of those styling cues that have been very popular for Cadillac are actually rubbing off on the Germans. Perhaps paying homage to Cadillac's fins of yesteryear, we have this LED strip that runs all the way from approximately the front axle down the front to the bottom of the bumper. Cadillac hides their front parking sensors very well. We also have a hidden radar cruise control module right there behind the Cadillac logo. These are HID headlamps, and they are standard on all of the V-Sport models. Regular CTSs do start out with standard halogen lamps. You won't find LED headlamps on the CTS at any price, and that is something that you're starting to find on most of those competitors out there. Unlike the base CTS, the V-Sport has a relatively limited set of competitors because Lexus and Infiniti don't really have anything in this high-performance segment. So that means that this competes very directly with the Audi S6, the Jaguar XF Supercharged, the BMW 550i, as well as the Mercedes-Benz E550. Among that competitive set, the CTS is the longest, and it's really obvious when you take a look at the side profile. We have a very long hood. This is one of the longest hoods in this segment. It gives the car a very elegant profile. We also have a relatively long front door. The wheelbase on the CTS isn't the biggest in this segment, and that's really obvious when you take a look at the back door, because the back door is a little bit smaller than some of those others. The overall length of the CTS allows it to have decent rear headroom and a drastically sloping rear window, at the same time as having a real trunk lid. The V-Sport is meant to be an addition to the CTS lineup, not a replacement for the Cadillac CTS V. There's no Cadillac CTS V at the moment, but we do expect one relatively soon. Up front, we have Cadillac's Brembo brake package, which is standard on all the V-Sport models, but we don't get any additional braking gear in the back of the car because we need to leave something for that CTS V to give us. Out back, Cadillac's angular theme continues, but this rear end is not as controversial as the last generation CTS Coupe. We have integrated exhaust tips, and we have a very discreet V badge right there. I'm actually not being facetious when I say that I wish Cadillac would bring back their fins. I had high hopes because the XTS had a definite finlet going on the rear lamp, but it's not happening on this CTS. Front seat comfort in the CTS is very good, but this is notably lower than the optional seats that you'll find in the BMW and the Mercedes competition. The BMW and Mercedes offer massaging seats, active bolsters, and more adjustments for the seat in general than Cadillac does. We are in the premium trim CTS V-Sport, which means we do get adjustable side bolsters and an extending thigh cushion that's activated by this manual lever right on front of the seat. All CTS V-Sport models do get a multi-way power driver's seat and power passenger seat with a 4-way adjustable lumbar support, 2-position seat memory, and a tilt telescopic steering wheel. The other thing to know about the front seats is that these are fairly wide. If you're a larger person, you may find this more comfortable than the German competition However, if you're a smaller person, you may feel a little bit lost. Because of the way Cadillac chose to apportion the seating space in the CTS, we have class-leading front legroom and about class-average rear legroom. I do have a decent amount of headroom thanks to the overall profile of the CTS. That's thanks to the general length of the car. However, these bottom seat cushions are a little bit close to the floor for my tastes. Seating is fairly upright in the rear, which is also very comfortable. You can really see what I mean about Cadillac choosing to apportion the space differently than the competition right over on the right side of the CTS, because there's an awful lot more front legroom going on than you'll find in any of the competition, resulting in a very tight back seat for me right here. This front seat is all the way back in its tracks, and a 6'5", 6'6" person would have no problem stretching out their legs in the front, which is just not something you can do in the Germans. Even though the rear bench seat has very exaggerated buckets on the outboard positions and a fairly high middle seat, I still have a little bit of headroom left. My hair is brushing the ceiling, but my head is not touching the ceiling. However, the CTS is one of the narrower sedans in this category, and it's really obvious here in the bench seat because it's an awful lot tighter to fit 3 adults across the back of the CTS versus the rest of the competition. It's also a little bit trickier to try and stick 3 child seats in the CTS. If you want to know more about the CTS and child seats, then go ahead and click that banner at the bottom of your screen. You'll be taken over to our CTS child seat video. Rear passengers have a reasonably sized center armrest with a storage cubby, flip-out cup holders right there. We also have a ski pass-through in addition to a 60/40 split folding rear bench seat. Let's take a quick spin around the interior. We have height adjustable seatbelts there for the driver and front passenger, 4-way adjustable headrests. Because we're in the premium model, we also have rear sunshades integrated into the door as well as the back window. We have heated and cooled seats in the front and optionally heated seats in the rear. The door panels are attractively made out of a lot of soft touch plastics as well as leather. If you get the premium option in the Cadillac CTS, you also get a full leather interior. The dashboard is an attractive combination of injected mold materials and stitched materials. We also have carbon fiber trim in the V-Sport, and we have a fairly large glove box opened by a touch button right there in the center console. The glove box is where you will find the single slot DVD and CD player for this car. Cadillac's angular style continues on the dashboard. We do have a center channel speaker up there above the air vents. If you want to know more about Cadillac Q, which is this large 8-inch touchscreen LCD infotainment system, go ahead and click that banner at the bottom of your screen. Below that we have our climate controls as well as our radio controls. These are all touch buttons, so none of these are real physical buttons. And if we touch the bottom of this, it opens up to reveal an additional storage cubby with the USB port right back there that's lit up. The CTS uses a very traditionally shaped shifter with a manual mode button on the top. You can also engage manual mode with the shift paddles. We have our stability control disable button and our suspension and transmission mode selector right there. This is where you'll find the ashtray and 12-volt power port. And then we have a motorized cover for the 2 large cup holders. This is a very large cup holder setup, easily able to accommodate the largest sodas that we were able to throw at it. They don't bump into each other like you'd find in some of the Germans either. Large padded center armrest reveals a fairly decently sized cubby for a rear-wheel drive vehicle. We will also find 12-volt power port here and 2 additional USB ports along with an auxiliary input. Because we're in the premium model, we also have a 120-volt power outlet right there in the center console. Because we're in the premium trim of the V-Sport, we have this gorgeous 12.3-inch LCD instrument cluster. Rather unfortunately, if you don't choose the premium trim, you get a fairly unattractive analog gauge cluster. We'll pop a picture in here so you can see what that looks like. If we move on out to the steering wheel, we have a very attractive steering wheel, leather airbag cover. This button arrangement controls that multi-information screen right there. Track up, down. We have our volume up and down buttons over here, cruise control buttons, voice control button, heated steering wheel, and hang-up button. All V-Sport models have these attractive magnesium paddle shifters, and this transmission has a true manual mode. So if you command gears 2 through 8, the only way the transmission will shift for you is if you slow down. From this vantage point, you can also see the turn signal in the CTS V-Sport, so we probably ought to talk about parts. It's very popular in certain circles to beat Cadillac up about sharing parts with the lesser cars in the General Motors portfolio. Well, that's definitely true, and this car shares seat controls, window switches, turn signal stalks, heads-up buttons, and things like that with other models in the General Motors family. I don't necessarily think that that's fair. After all, Toyota shares with Lexus, Volkswagen shares with Audi, Mercedes-Benz even shares a number of parts with the Dodge Durango. You'll find the same window switches in both the E-Class as well as the Dodge Durango. So sharing window switches between a Cadillac and something like a Buick Verano isn't really that big of a problem as long as the parts feel quality. and for the most part, the parts in this car do have a very solid feel to them. The only exception is this mirror control right here on the driver's door, but then again, I can find an exception in pretty much every luxury vehicle out there, so there's definitely nothing unique or nothing untoward about Cadillac's part sharing with the lessers, and a lot of people need to get over that. At 13.7 cubic feet, this trunk is among the smallest in the segment. It's notably smaller than the Mercedes-Benz E550's trunk, and it's considerably smaller than the Jaguar XF Supercharged trunk. It's also not finished quite as nicely as the Mercedes or the BMW trunks, although we do have a nice trunk handle here to help you close the trunk. It's not positioned in the same way that the Germans are, so it's a little bit trickier to actually use that handle to close the trunk. You also won't find any automatic trunk closers in the CTS. It's just not offered at any price at this time. Because the CTS is aluminum intensive, this trunk lid also has a lighter, some might even say cheaper feel, but really it's just because of the aluminum intensive nature of the build of the CTS and their desire to reduce weight as much as possible. We score 7 out of 10 points overall in our exclusive Trunk Comfort Index. Until General Motors launches the hotly anticipated CTS V sometime later this year, we hope, there are 3 different engine options in the CTS. Things start out with the 2.0T engine. It's a 2-liter direct injection turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, produces 272 horsepower, 295 pound-feet of torque. We then have a 3.6-liter naturally aspirated engine, produces 321 horsepower, 275 pound-feet of torque. You'll find that engine in a wide variety of different GM vehicles. Then we have this particular engine. It's exclusive to the V-Sport model, and it's a twin-turbo 3.6-liter V6 engine. Although it's based on that same 3.6-liter naturally aspirated engine, it shares very few parts in reality. Power is up to 420 horsepower and 430 pound-feet of torque. Instead of the 6-speed General Motors transmission that you find in the 2.0T model, the V-Sport gets an 8-speed transmission by ASIN. This is essentially the same transmission that you'll find in the Lexus LS as well as the Lexus GS model, so it has a solid luxury car pedigree. Although I suppose you could call the Maserati Ghibli competition with the CTS, it plays in kind of a different pool. That means this is currently the only twin-turbo V6 in this segment. Mercedes does plan on replacing their 4.6-liter V8 engine in the 550i with a twin-turbo V6 at some point, but we haven't heard exact details yet. Compared to the competition, Audi's S6 produces 420 horsepower and 406 pound-feet of torque from its 4-liter V8. Jaguar gets 470 horsepower and 424 pound-feet of torque from a supercharged 5-liter V8. Mercedes-Benz has that 4.6-liter twin-turbo V8, produces 402 horsepower, 443 pound-feet of torque. BMW is by far the leader in this segment right now with a twin-turbo 4.4-liter V8 engine, produces 445 horsepower and 480 pound-feet of torque. However, that BMW is about 450 pounds heavier than this CTS V-Sport. A lot of that really is noticeable under the hood because we have a lot of aluminum parts in this car. We have aluminum doors, we have an aluminum hood, and we have a lot of aluminum suspension componentry as well. Out on the road, the weight difference between the CTS V-Sport, the 550i, and the E550 is very obvious. The weight balance difference between this and the Audi S6 is also equally as obvious out on the road. The light chassis also has a dramatic effect on performance. We clocked 60 in this car in 4.75 seconds. That's a decent amount faster than the Mercedes-Benz E550. It's right around the same time that we clocked in the Jaguar XF Supercharged, and it is just a hair slower than the BMW 550i, which came in right around 4.4 seconds. The car's light curb weight and excellent weight balance are really obvious out on these winding mountain roads like this because this car has an impeccable feel out on the road. It's very easy to steer this car with your right foot if you feel so inclined. If you don't, then this car is very neutral in the corners with the power off. The CTS does use electric power steering just like every other option in this segment. However, Cadillac has somehow managed to put just a little bit of feel back into the steering in the CTS. It's really obvious yet again out on these winding mountain roads where it does have a definite edge over the BMW, the Mercedes, as well as the Audi. All V-Sport models use General Motors' MagneRide suspension system. This system uses a ferromagnetic fluid inside the strut in each corner of the car's suspension. By passing an electric current through that fluid, they can change its viscosity and make the damping either firm or soft, depending on what they're after at the exact moment. It's all controlled by the car's computer. You can adjust it using the drive mode selector in this car and choose between track, sport, as well as touring mode. Regardless of which mode you choose, however, the V-Sport tends to be a fairly firm suspension. It's not harsh, however, so it's never going to be very punishing out on the road, which is something I complained about in the previous generation Cadillac CTS V. I just felt that it was a little bit too punishing for daily use, and that's not happening in the V-Sport. The suspension is incredibly well sorted. The 550i offers the choice between a regular or a sport suspension setup, but it is a little bit softer than the CTS V-Sport all the way around. Mercedes offers two different suspension systems in the E550, a regular spring setup as well as an air ride suspension, but the air ride suspension does feel a little bit odd for a sporting car. It's definitely tuned to the softer, more luxurious side of things. Braking in the CTS V-Sport is absolutely excellent. These are very fade-resistant brakes up front, and because the CTS V-Sport doesn't weigh as much as the competition, stopping distances are much shorter and fade resistance is definitely better. The only area where people may complain about the CTS V-Sport is in the exhaust note. This is a twin-turbo V6 engine, so it definitely has a V6 type sound to it. It actually reminds me a great deal of Maserati's brand new mid-size luxury sedan, the Ghibli, because that is also a twin-turbo V6 engine. Twin-turbo V6s have also been used in a wide variety of Italian sports cars, etc., so it is a fairly pleasing sound. The important thing to know here, however, is that the BMW and the Mercedes don't have a traditional V8 sound either, because they use twin turbos as well. By sticking a turbocharger in the exhaust, it really messes with the exhaust sound, and that's exactly why BMW uses a fake engine soundtrack in the BMW M5. The Jaguar XF Supercharged has an incredible sound to it because it doesn't use turbochargers. It uses a supercharger, so there's nothing in the exhaust to mess with the sound, and it's by far the better sounding entry in the segment. When it comes to driving dynamics, there is absolutely no question the CTS V-Sport is by far the winner in this segment. The Audi S6 really is kind of at the bottom of the pack for me in terms of true driving dynamics. Well, I might buy an S6 because it's all-wheel drive. It does lend itself to a different driving dynamic out on the road. And because the S6 has its engine entirely in front of the front axle, it's also nose heavy, and that's very obvious out on the road. The E550 is now available only in all-wheel drive, and that does take a dynamic toll out on the road as well. BMW's 550i is incredibly fast in a straight line, but when you start entering corners, the CTS V-Sport just absolutely eats it up, both in terms of actual handling ability as well as feel. This is far more accurate, far more connected to the road than that 550i. The Jaguar XF Supercharged is a very close second for me in this category. It has the same sort of connected feel going on in this Cadillac CTS V-Sport, but it just lacks the power because of that supercharger. It doesn't have a whole lot of torque going on there, and it is a little bit heavier than the CTS. With this generation of Cadillac CTS, General Motors decided to stop playing the game of giving you a 5 Series sized car for 3 Series sized pricing. And I think with the driving dynamics on the CTS V, it was an easy decision to make. Pricing starts at $46,025 for the 2.0T model, $54,625 for the 3.6-liter V6 model. I think I would skip that one. I didn't really find the 3.6-liter V6 to be that engaging. I think it was down on power, and I think the 2.0T is by far the better option to get. Pricing for this V-Sport starts at $59,995 for the standard model. For the premium model, as we're testing it right here, $69,995. There are very few options on the standard model, so you really just have to choose between the standard or the premium, a few leather choices, some wheel choices, and paint options as well. If you load your V-Sport all the way up, you'll hit $72,740. For detailed pricing comparisons, I encourage you to visit my friends over at TrueDelta.com. But in general, the CTS V-Sport ends up about $2,000 less than the Mercedes-Benz E550. However, the E550 is all-wheel drive only for the 2014 model year, really making this about the same price overall. Compared to the BMW, the CTS V-Sport Standard Edition is about $4,000 less than a similarly configured BMW 550i. However, when you option it up, as our tester is right here, which is the Premium Edition with a few little options, it ends up being essentially the same price as the BMW 550i. You can get your 550i much more expensive than the CTS V-Sport, however, because there are a lot of options available on that 550i that you just can't get in the Cadillac. Before you think that the V-Sport is the most expensive option in this segment, it still has a decent value proposition when you compare it against the Audi S6. The S6 is $4,000 to $8,000 more expensive, similarly configured, even when you take into account the Audi Quattro system that's standard on the S6. This is also about $8,000 cheaper than the Jaguar XF Supercharged, and the Jaguar XF Supercharged is, in a way, very good competition to the CTS V-Sport because both of them play in a similar pool. Both of them are trying to play to the meat of this segment rather than offering every option available. So the Jaguar XF Supercharged has the same sort of limitations when it comes to its option list as you find in the CTS V. You won't find the same level of equipment, the same level of features, the same level of opulent luxury gadgets or goodies or electronic systems like night vision in the CTS V-Sport or in that Jaguar XF Supercharged. It turns out that bringing a V6 engine to a V8 fight was the best thing that Cadillac could have done. The V6 engine and its relative lightweight really contributes to the way the CTS V-Sport feels out on the road. And that's really what's interesting about the V-Sport. Cadillac has in the past created very competitive vehicles in this segment, but there were always some buts. There were always some qualifications. There was always that comment about value, that it was a very good car, wasn't quite as good as the competition, but the value really pushed it over the edge. That's not something you can say about the CTS V-Sport anymore, because it's not the value option in the segment. It's just the best option in the segment, because this car has the best driving dynamics by far. It actually has reasonable fuel economy thanks to that V6 engine as well. We've been averaging about 24 to 25 miles per gallon in this car, which is better than I've averaged in any of the alternatives. The V-Sport also wins for being the most attractive in this segment to my eye. Again, styling is very subjective, so I'd like to know what you think in the comment section down below. But to me, this is number one in the segment. The Mercedes-Benz E-Class is a very close second if you get the Sport front end. If you don't, then it's a little bit lower on the list. I think that the BMW 5 Series is very attractive, elegant, but it's also conservative to a fault. BMW is really going for a very luxurious sedan these days rather than more of an aggressive sporty car like the CTS V-Sport. The Jaguar XF is my kind of car. It sounds incredible. However, I do have to admit it is awfully plain Jane when you park it right next to a V-Sport. It's a very exciting time at Cadillac. The rumor mill is telling me that they plan on putting this engine in the Cadillac ATS, and that should be very exciting as well. More importantly, however, this has me really wondering what the new CTS V is going to be like, because if this car is this good and the old CTS V was that much better than the old CTS, then we're really in for a fun time at Cadillac. Thanks for taking the time to watch this video. Again, I'm Alex Dykes, and this has been the 2014 Cadillac CTS V-Sport. Go ahead and click that subscribe banner at the bottom of your screen so you can be updated on all of our latest videos. Like this video, share this video, give it the thumbs up, comment on the video, tell me what you liked and didn't like about the car, or just about this channel in general. I always value your feedback. You can also send me emails to alex@alexonautos.com. You can find me at facebook.com/alexonautos. And at the end of this video, there'll be some links so you can click on over to our full review of the Cadillac ATS as well as the Cadillac CTS. That would be the non-V-Sport model. And we'll see you next week.